What's up, everybody? I hope you're all doing fantastic. I'm doing great because it's time once again for my favorite Pokemon tournament of the year. The Victory Road World Cup of VGC starts this week. We're gonna have over 700 players representing 60 different nations battling it out to prove whose country is the strongest at Pokemon VGC. Today we're going to be breaking down all of the preliminary groups and some of the more interesting teams in some of those groups as well. First of all, let's talk about the format. There are 60 teams, but the top 8 from last year's World Cup are directly seeded into the second group stage. So for the first preliminary stage, we have 52 teams battling it out in 13 groups of 4. The top 24 teams will advance. For those of you who are math majors, you may have realized that that's not a nice clean number. There were a lot of signups, so there's going to be a couple of second place teams that miss out as well. That's going to come down to tiebreakers. But going forward, we're going to jump into 32 teams in the second group stage, playing off in 8 more groups of 4, and then we're going to move on to a single elimination top 16 bracket. All of these matches, you might be wondering, how does a Pokemon Team League work? What does this look like? Well, basically, each team is going to field 8 players against one another, and they're just going to play 8 individual matches. So it's a best of 8 in the group stages. If you win, you get 3 points. If you draw, you get 1 point. And then going into the playoffs, when there are no more draws, it's reduced to a 7v7. This many players makes it really, really interesting, though, because it means that a lot of these teams end up either relying on the star power of a couple of players, which doesn't really get you all the way there, and then you have other teams that kind of excel in their depth. So it's always really interesting. I always really like team leagues like this that don't allow like one player to carry a team. Like it's not like Portugal is going to win the World Cup just because Edu showed up, right? The rest of the team is going to have to do a job as well. Because of this format, a lot of really interesting upsets and storylines happen every single year. In 2021, I was part of a Swiss team that managed to make it all the way to top 8 despite people thinking that we had no chance. And we're not the only ones to have miracle runs like that, so I'm really fascinated to see what happens this year. This video is probably going to come out after a couple of results have started trickling in, so I'm recording it right after the group draw. So forgive me if the results, if I'm not 100% aware of all the results that have happened by the time the video comes out. As I alluded to before, the top 8 teams from last year's World Cup are already seeded into the second group stage. A shocking final saw Thailand defeat Canada 4-3 in a battle of the underdogs. Australia, France, India, South Korea, the United States, and Poland also joined them in being seeded. On the other side of things, we have 6 new teams making their World Cup debuts. Barbados, Belize, Nicaragua, San Marino, Pakistan, and Morocco will all be showing their skills for the first time. But without further ado, let's get right into the groups. These are all round-robin groups, so each team will play every other team in a 3-week group stage. The winner of each group will automatically advance, and most of the second-place teams will also advance. But as I mentioned before, due to there being a couple too many, it's going to come down to tiebreakers, and the 2 worst-performing second-place teams will also be eliminated. Do you believe in miracles? I'm not entirely sure that I do. In Group A, Belize are the newcomers, and they'll be facing off against Indonesia, Jamaica, and Brazil. Brazil are the obvious favorites in this group, but Belize's Week 1 match is going to be against Jamaica. Jamaica's a team that I'd also like to spotlight a little bit because I gave them a lot of credit in 2022 going into the preliminaries as a team that had a lot of solid players. They didn't really have the star power to lead the way, but they had players that I have a lot of respect for. Going into this year, they've changed it a little bit. Joshua Lorsey joins the team, and that is a massive buff for Jamaica. They have a little bit of star power there, and also, Eric Stewart has really had a great season in 2022-23, and looks to be a great player to lead the way alongside Joshua Lorsey. And I know those two guys are also super close friends. If you follow them on Twitter, you see them tweeting about how good friends they are. That's always great in a team league situation. But it's not just Lorsey and Stewart. It's also going to be players like Jordan Diddy, Kevon Borland, Brandon Perry. They have players that are really solid to back up the star power of this team. And while they weren't quite able to make a deep run happen last year, I absolutely believe that Jamaica has what it takes to come out of this group in second place. Indonesia is another team that is interesting to talk about. They're a team that has some pretty solid players, but they've had a bit of a hard time in the past 2 World Cups, and it's always hard for me to exactly pin down what I think of Indonesia's overall level. I do think they're strong enough to maybe upset my predictions in this group, but I struggle to put them in second. So I would say Brazil first, Jamaica second, Indonesia third, and Belize in fourth. Group B also has a newcomer, and the B stands for Barbados. They have an even worse matchup than Belize here. They've pulled Japan, and they've also pulled Mexico. Honestly, this group is really cut and dry in my opinion. I'm just going to tell you what's going to happen. Japan in first, Mexico in second, Egypt in third, Belize in fourth. But I'm not done. I want to talk about Team Japan. Now, if you don't follow the World Cup, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, Japan, it's Japan. They're just going to go get top 4, and we'll see. Maybe they win. It's probably going to win this tournament. But then, I'll have you rewind a little bit. The top 8 teams of the last World Cup aren't playing right now, which means Japan didn't make it. Japan has had a really bad time the last 2 World Cups. Last year, they were knocked out in the top 16 by eventual champions Thailand, and in 2021, they didn't even make it past groups. You might think that, okay, well, maybe it's because they don't care about this tournament. They're just like kind of memeing around. No, they bring really good lineups to this team, and I want to talk about their lineup for the 2023 World Cup. They are not playing around. Leading the line, we have Shohei Kimura, the reigning world champion, and he's joined by Shoma Honami, another world champion, and also Tomoya Ogawa, another world champion from the senior division this year, but that's still very, very good. That's not all they have, though. It's Japan. Hirofumi is the world's runner-up and one of the most legendary team builders in the scene. Mao Harada and Tomoyuki Yoshimura have both finished top 4 at Worlds. I could go in detail about every single player on this team. They're all insane. I don't have time. This is already going to be a really long video. But Japan is going to be a super interesting team to watch this year. They've brought out the biggest guns imaginable. They want to make up for the last 2 years. I expect them to destroy Group B, but we'll see if they can make it out of the second group stage. We'll see. It's a tough tournament. We'll see. We'll be back in a few weeks to talk about how they did and how we expect them to do in the second group stage. Group C is the first really interesting group to me. There is a clear dominating force here with Team China, and Ecuador continue their streak of just being really unlucky and pulling pretty hard groups every step of the way. Something that's important to note about Ecuador is that world champion Paul Ruiz doesn't actually play on this team, and regardless of that, they were able to advance over Austria and Portugal in the preliminaries last year. So there is some depth there, even if they do look like they're a little bit short-handed. Vietnam has also advanced past the preliminaries in both of the last 2 years. But both of those groups were pretty easy in comparison to some of the other ones, so it's kind of hard for me to gauge just how strong a performance that is. And they did kind of get whomped in Group Stage 2 both years, so it's tough to judge. This is a really interesting group, but there's one team left, and that's Team Israel. I would like to talk a little bit about Team Israel as a team that has had a really, really hard time the last 2 years. Israel is on a run of 6 consecutive losses, so you might be looking at this and going, okay, well, they're just not a very good team then. Like, what are we doing here? But similar to Jamaica and a few other teams, Israel has called in some big reinforcements this year. Enosh Shachar has been leading the line for them for years. He's obviously a top player. He's been a top player for a decade at this point. But you can't do it alone in an 8v8 format. And this year, Israel has brought in Yotam Cohen and also Aaron Brock, both players who had really solid seasons last year and both made Worlds. Aaron Brock, of course, starting his 2023 year with a top 4 at the San Diego Regionals, and Yotam also making day 2 multiple times. I think Yotam did get top 8 in one as well, right? Not 100% sure. Editor Craig will tell me if I'm wrong or right here, I guess. Overall, those 3 players are a really good backbone of any team, and Israel does have the players to be able to pull it off if those 3 can win. There's going to be a lot of pressure on the core 3 here to actually win their matches every single week, but any match where the 3 big guns win should be a match where Israel is able to clinch a victory. Even in a group like this, I think they have a pretty decent shot to make it out in second. China first, Israel second, Ecuador third, and Vietnam fourth is my prediction. Group D has my nod for the Absolute Nightmare to Schedule Your Matches award. This group has 2 teams from the Americas, 1 from Europe and 1 from Asia, so have fun with the time zones, guys. It's a really interesting group that also features a dominating force, and you might be surprised to hear that that dominating force is Singapore. Singapore have had a great couple of years in the World Cup, going all the way to the top 8 in 2021 and making it back to the playoffs in 2022. In 2021, they also defeated Peru in the top 16 match, which, if you don't really follow the World Cup that much, might not sound that impressive, but keep watching the video because later on I'm going to go into how insanely good Peru is. Last year, Singapore was able to knock out Germany in the second group stage, and they also played incredibly close sets versus both Japan and an India team that was on an absolute tear last year. Their biggest name player is Melvin Ke, who goes by Shaman online and is one of the most innovative team builders in the entire VGC scene. He's also top cut like 75 international championships or something stupid. But the rest of the team features a lot of squad depth. Every single player shows up when they're needed. If there's one more player that I want to keep a particularly close eye on this year, though, it's going to be Hakim Na. Hakim was able to make a 4-0 run through last year's World Cup, despite the fact that they kept playing against teams like Germany and Japan and India. So I'm really interested to see if Hakim can make it happen for a second year in a row. Norway, Uruguay, and Costa Rica were all able to make it past the preliminary stage last year, and funnily enough, Norway and Uruguay actually played in the 2021 preliminaries, but neither was able to advance from that group. Really, this group is kind of just the Singapore show to me, but my expectation is that Singapore will win the group, Costa Rica will edge out second place with Norway in third and Uruguay in fourth. Group E stands for España and friends. Spain is going to destroy this group. It's really going to be more of a story of how many sets does Spain lose. I believe India pulled off like a 22-2 last year. Can Spain do better? I feel like this might be the group. That being said, this is a really close fight for second place in this group. Puerto Rico did advance past the preliminaries in both 2021 and 2022. They have some solid play on their team. And Luxembourg are a new team from last year, but in their debut match, they defeated Finland. They were eliminated from that preliminary group, but they've also shown that they can play the game. Nicaragua are this year's debutants, so I really have no idea how they're going to play, but I definitely see this being an interesting battle for second, with Spain up there. Honestly, what might end up making the difference in this group is which team loses by the lowest margin to Spain, because that will affect tiebreakers here. And this is one where it's going to be especially tough because with two teams that finish in second not advancing, this group definitely looks like a favorite for their second place team to not advance. Because if they get smashed into the ground by Spain, that will hurt their tiebreaker score when looking at the other groups. So it's going to be a tough one for the other three teams, but I'm going to just put in Spain first, Costa Rica second, Nicaragua third, Luxembourg fourth. But really, honestly, I don't know how to rate the other three teams in this group. It's really going to be tough. Group F is a pretty crazy group. Italy come in as the clear favorites. They're arguably the country with the most depth, except for, like, Japan. I always like to tell a joke that when I sit down at a regional and I'm playing round one against somebody that I've never heard of in my life, but the country code on the match slip is that they're from Italy, I just expect to lose. Everyone from Italy just seems to be obscenely good at Pokemon, and they just come up with an amazing team every single year. But Greece and Portugal also have really good players. Portugal's ace is the 2022 world champion Eduardo Cunha, and Greece has several strong players like Ilias Rafugales, Costa Didymos, and, oh boy, Paschalis Dermentis. Posder, did I get it right? Posder, please. I tried Posder. Despite their strong players, though, Portugal and Greece have struggled in the last 2 years of the World Cup. Greece has failed to make it out of the preliminaries in both tournaments, and Portugal failed last year in 22. And even in 2021, where they did advance, they got smacked around in the second group stage pretty hard. Morocco are also in this group, making their debut this year. And it's a tough one to call. Like, on paper, Morocco should have a really hard time, but Portugal and Greece have struggled in the World Cup, which might give them some hope that they can sneak out an upset and finish in second. Regardless, it's a tough group to call, but I'm going to say Italy in first, Portugal in second, Greece in third, and Morocco in fourth. Group G. The UK can't catch a break, constantly being thrown into the toughest of groups. This year isn't quite as bad as past years, but it's really not easy. Sweden have had a rough time of it the last couple of years as well, losing out in a three-way tie in 2021 versus Korea and Singapore. Fun fact, Denmark was also in that group, but they lost every match 7-1. 2022 was a little bit better for Denmark as they managed to hold eventual semi-finalists France to a draw, but they still didn't manage to win a match. This year, the steadily improving Frederik and Nikolai Høj-Nielsen brothers is a massive buff to Denmark's chances. Both have put up impressive results last year, including Nikolai's incredible run to the top 8 of Worlds. But wait, there's more! El Salvador is sick too. Ezequiel Cordero and René Alvarenga are extremely strong and have helped to lead El Salvador to strong finishes in the World Cup, including a 2021 playoffs run where they beat Portugal and India on their way. This group really is going to come down to being a battle of star power versus depth. The UK are favorites as the only team to have both, but Sweden has a really well-rounded lineup of very solid players across the board, while Denmark and El Salvador will be relying on their heavy hitters, putting them far enough ahead that the rest of the team can close out the weeks. My expectation is UK in first, with Denmark in second, Sweden in third, and El Salvador in fourth. Is that my prediction? Nah, go back, rewind it. My prediction is the UK in first, Sweden's depth coming out in second, with Denmark in third and El Salvador in fourth. God, it feels really weird to put El Salvador in fourth. They're so good. My prediction is the UK in first, Sweden in second, El Salvador in third, Denmark in fourth. San Marino are the newcomers in Group H. As the ultimate underdogs in football, which I watch a lot of, I have a very great soft spot for the country of San Marino. And I feel like everybody who watches football has a soft spot for San Marino. We're all just waiting for the day for them to win a World Cup qualifying match so that we can all erupt in joyous celebrations. And that's going to be me when they win a match in the World Cup of VGC. I really, really hope that they do. I really want to see San Marino make like a miracle run. For Group H, their toughest opposition is going to be Taiwan, who are fresh off the back of a top 16 finish after they topped a group with Poland and the defending champion Spain. That was an incredible group. I remember watching the last matches. I think it came down to like the final match of Taiwan versus Spain, where like the winner was going to top the group and the loser was going to finish third, and they knocked out Spain directly, it was something like that, but it was an amazing performance regardless. New Zealand's also in this group, and they started 2021 with a bang, eliminating Australia from the preliminaries. This is an Australia team that ended up getting fourth last year. Like, they are a good team. But New Zealand also has not recorded a win since that fateful match against Australia. They've pulled out draws and been a thorn in the sides of really, really strong teams, though, so it's not like they've just been getting slapped around. This is the easiest group that New Zealand's had in a while, so they're definitely going to be looking to capitalize to make sure that they can finish in the top two. My expectation is Taiwan in first, New Zealand in second. I really shouldn't put San Marino above fourth, but I'm going to put San Marino above fourth and Colombia in fourth. I'm really sorry, Colombia. You have a good team, but like, it's the San Marino dream. I gotta go for them. I'm sorry. Group I might look like a group that, if you're new to the World Cup, you can scroll past, come back in a couple weeks, see who advanced, I guess. Don't do that. Group I is crazy. Peru is the team to watch. Let's talk Peru. I told you we'd come back to Peru. Here we are. Peru has a history of getting put into groups of death. Peru also has a history of not giving a f***. They are crazy in these group stages. They've made back-to-back playoffs appearances, losing out in the top 16 both times, but both of those matches were very close 4-3 losses. They are an extremely solid team led by 5-time special event champion Dorian Quiñones, Players Cup 4 and 3-time regional champion Renzo Navarro, and of course regional champion Diego Gutierrez, who is fresh off of a top 4 finish at the Curitiba Regional. But it's not just those three. The whole team is incredibly strong, and you really should not look past this team. They could absolutely make a deep run in any World Cup, but especially this one. This group isn't just the Peru show, though. Malaysia is a really interesting team that managed to make it all the way to the top 16 in 2021. Last year went pretty poorly for them as they failed to advance past the preliminaries, but they also had Germany and the UK in their group, and they did put up a pretty good fight. Realistically, I think Peru should be collecting at least 7 points here, but Austria also has it in them to be a bit of a problem matchup. It's hard for me to see them advancing unless they can upset Malaysia, though. And really, the Dominicans are probably going to have a tough time. I expect Peru in first, Malaysia in second, Austria in third, and the Dominican Republic in fourth. Netherlands are the favorites here, but Hong Kong are also strong. This group really should be pretty straightforward, but let's talk a little bit about Team Netherlands. Netherlands are a strong team that have made the playoffs in both 2021 and 2022, and their key players this year are going to be Robbie Schaj, who is the Seniors World's runner-up, and Sven van der Voorden, who is really just an expert in team leagues. He excels in this kind of a format, in a preparation format where he just has to build for a single best of 3. He's really, really good. The real strength of Netherlands is their depth, though. They don't really have an Eduardo Cunha here. They don't really have that one guy leading the way. It's just 12 really good players, and honestly, that is, in some ways, the scariest kind of a team to play against. So, Netherlands, once again, going to be trying to lean on that depth to make a third consecutive playoff appearance, and in this group, they really should be able to make it out fairly easily. Hong Kong haven't managed to make playoffs, but last year they did hold eventual champions Thailand to a draw. Neither Honduras nor Venezuela has actually recorded a single win in the last 2 years, though, so they really should be having a tough time here. I think this group is pretty cut and dry. Netherlands in first, Hong Kong in second, and then for the other two, I'm going to say Venezuela in third and Honduras in fourth. Sorry, didn't see you there. Group K, one of the toughest groups for sure. On paper, the favorites here have to be Germany, but Switzerland and Ireland are very tough teams as well. Let's talk a little bit about Germany. Their key players are going to be Michael Kesch, the runner-up from this past World Championship, Marco Statter, who's just amazing, Maurice Uteg, who is a regional champion from 2022, and also just Top Cut Worlds. But honestly, this whole team is cracked. Germany is very similar to Japan in their World Cup lore. They always have a really strong team, and they also don't do well. So, 2021, Germany was eliminated in the preliminaries, collecting only a single point, which was just a really, really embarrassing result. 2022, they were eliminated by Singapore in the second group stage, which is better, but they still are a team that really should be trying to get top 8 every single year at the very least. So they are kind of similar to Japan. They have that quality. The question is, will they live up to their potential? Switzerland is my team. Hello there, I manage Switzerland. I also play for Switzerland. Switzerland managed to make it all the way to the top 8 in 2021, back when we were a ragtag group of literally anybody in the country I could find that owned Pokemon Sword and Shield, so that was an amazing run. More lore to be found there if you want to go digging. It was fantastic. But yeah, last year we were eliminated in the second group stage on tiebreakers. You can look at the results here. I don't even remember what the tiebreaker was, because according to the website, we're tied on all tiebreakers. There are more tiebreakers in the rulebook than show up on the website, just because it would get a little cluttered, but it was dumb and silly and very, very close. So this year we'll be back. We're back. We feel very confident. We have a really, really strong team. We did lose Andrea Olea, who is one of our best players, one of the 2 Swiss players who has won a major tournament. Unfortunately, will not be playing. But we've also gained some players like Oscar Principal, who is a recent graduate from the senior division, who did very, very well last year. Carmine Ragone, who once played for Austria but has moved to Switzerland and is also just an amazing team league player. He's consistently collects CP at like regionals, but where he really has excelled is in team leagues. He had an amazing VCL season where I think he went 12-1 or something silly. So really big players to watch on our team, as well as the usual suspects. We have a lot of confidence going into this group stage. But Ireland is also in this group, and they're also a very solid team. Matty Morgan just got top 8 at Worlds, and Patrick Donegan just made it to day 2. Brian Collins is also fresh off of a day 2 appearance at Pittsburgh and is a very consistent performer. I think Ireland, though, doesn't have quite the depth we do as far as I'm aware, so it's really going to be one of those classic battles of like star power versus depth between the two of us, but I think that we have the edge in that matchup. That would be my expectation. Finally, Pakistan is making their debut. I really don't know much about this team. I couldn't find a lot of information, but I'm hoping for some good games. Regardless, predictions! Germany first, Switzerland second, Ireland third, and Pakistan fourth. Argentina are the clear favorites in Group L, coming off the back of consecutive top 16 performances. Every other team in this group has really strong players, though, and it's going to be an all-out battle for second place. Guatemala has Nathan Ortiz returning after not playing last year, Juan Manuel Santizo as manager and player, who's also a very, very strong player, and Jonathan Melendez, who, when he plays well, is kind of insane. He came off the back of making day 2 in Pittsburgh off of one of the hardest day 1 schedules that I've ever seen. Those 3 players are a really, really strong backbone for Guatemala, who does have solid players to round out their roster. Panama and Philippines have both been pretty decent in the preliminaries in the past couple of years, but I don't think they quite have what it takes to beat out Guatemala for second. I'm going to say Argentina in first, Guatemala in second, Philippines in third, and Panama in fourth. Finally, the last group to cover is honestly one of the easiest, I think. Chile realistically should run away with this group. The other 3 teams are arguably 3 of the weaker teams from each of their respective pot. Bolivia did manage to win a group with Mexico in it though, so I'd probably give them the slight edge. Belgium does have some strong players, so they're not to be underestimated, but Turkey will be happy to just get anything done at all this year. Last year, their preliminary group was an absolute debacle, and they only managed to win 3 of their 24 sets, so any win will be a good step forward for Turkey. This one should really just be Chile in first, I'm going to say Bolivia in second, Belgium in third, and Turkey in fourth. If you're playing in the World Cup and I wasn't able to really talk about your team that much, I do apologize. This video is already very, very long, and there's just so much to cover in the World Cup that I kind of just have to pick my battles. But these are my predictions for the preliminary qualifying stage. Let me know in the comments below who you expect to advance. Am I wrong? Tell me what you think I got very, very wrong. Tell me if you think that there's a breakout player out there somewhere that I missed that I should talk about more. And one thing that I do actually want y'all's opinion on is I was considering doing some shorts talking about the World Cup. Maybe if there's like a particularly interesting result that happens or like some really cool teams that show up. Is that some content that you think would be interesting over on the short side? Please do let me know. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, it's been a long recording session, and I'm sure it's going to be a long editing session for Craig as well. So please smack the subscribe button. We're going to bring you more World Cup content. I'm going to do another video like this before the group stage and also before the playoffs. So the trilogy of World Cup videos coming out. This is episode 1. Smack that like button to show me if you want me to do some additional coverage as well. So if you're playing, there's 700 of us playing in this tournament. There's a good chance that a lot of you watching are playing in the World Cup. So best of luck to all of you. Let's do some awesome Pokemon stuff. And I hope to see you all on the battlefield. We'll be back in 3 weeks to cover what I got right and what I got wrong at the end of the preliminary stage.